So in Tai Chi, we want to reduce, and I'm saying reduce, not completely erase, but reduce the lordosis in the low back. We want to flatten it out a little bit and open it up so that the spine is a little more straight. And I don't know if you could see in that camera, but it actually relieves some of the pressure on the discs when we're in that position. Now, we don't do it by manually forcing it. We do that by placing the idea of weight at the sit bone, or at the sit bones or at your tailbone. So the weight pulling down. So if you're just sitting there or standing, and you can just imagine that you've got a fishing lure, a fishing wire hanging on your tailbone, and hanging from that tailbone is a 5-pound weight. And that opens up and positions the spine for you. At the same time, the crown of the head, it doesn't collapse with it. It opens up as well. All right, so it's this position, this more of a straightened spine that we want to aspire towards, but in a way of releasing the weight and suspending or feeling an upward feeling. Not like you're pulling upward, but there is an upward expression. Can you see it in the model a little bit? So it's not just down, it's not just up. So watch as I put the weight down. Do you see what it did to the tailbone? It naturally brought the tailbone down. It's not as though I'm taking the pelvis and tilting it. That's unnatural. Just put the weight at the tailbone, breathe into that weight, let it just be heavy, and then this part up here is anchored and suspending upward. And you can see, if you watch real close, you can see a bit of suspension between the vertebrae. Okay. Now, there is this thing called tensegrity, and tensegrity is a structure that has a mass, but then they aren't touching in order to create a nice sound architectural structure. It's called tensegrity. Buckminster Fuller made the first tensegrity building, right? You've heard of him, or he's the one that studied tensegrity. But what they're finding is that we have tensegrity in our body, and that tensegrity is created by, guess what? The fascia. Our tendons and our ligaments and all that mesh of fascia. As we are able to tap into the fascia, then we're tapping into this marvelous system of tensegrity, that these are working together to create an amazing structure. So this is a tensegrity model of your spine, of these vertebrae here. And if we use the principle of Tai Chi by releasing the bottom and the top floats up, can you see that that structure is more taut or more sound? Could you see that? Now here's what happens when we don't do Tai Chi. Gravity takes hold of us, collapse, and we try to overcome it with the muscles, but the muscles are really not part of the tensegrity system. Because the muscles, what do? They contract and shorten. And so if you have muscles and you're contracting and shortening them, it causes more compression, more shortening. But when we go into our fascial system and we're able to create true song in our body, then we open and we create more space there. And then I'm going to add a little weight to the tailbone and suspend the top. And now we have a very solid structure that is maintained by the ligaments and the tendons, and it creates lots of space in between joints. So we're doing two things when we create space. We're creating more tensegrity. I'm going to pull it a little bit. More tensegrity, more structure, and we're allowing those joints to breathe. And then in Tai Chi, we rotate the spine, and that tensegrity of opening up the tendons and ligaments. And we do this with our mind and by releasing the weight, releasing the tailbone, and holding the crown of the head. If I just release the tailbone, we still have this, even if incremental. So if you feel heavy in your Tai Chi, then chances are you're releasing downward, but the whole unit's releasing downward, and you can see that the tensegrity is then disrupted. But if you release downward and you have an expression of that floating upward, then the whole thing becomes very nicely structured. And it's a unit that is powerful, it's strong. So this is a really beautiful visual, not twisting, and just opening. And then we rotate the whole thing. And then one of the questions yesterday was, how does this relate to the spiraling? Because you would think that, this is really cool too, a nice visual, you would think the spiraling would do this, right? But to me, that's still twisting at the spine, and you can't really twist the spine without a bit of collapsing. So the spiral happens, it is a spiral like this, but it's happening from your foot through the thigh, then the whole unit here is this, and the spiral is the rotation. Then the spiral goes out through from the elbow to the fingertips. So there is no rotation at the shoulder. Our shoulder is pretty inert. It creates tensegrity. And then we can manipulate the incoming force with the rotation at the fingertips, or the spiraling from the elbow out to the fingertips. So I call this the Queen's Wave. Everybody do the Queen's Wave. Yeah, so the Queen's Wave. And then you might recall Master Ting saying it comes though from the shoulder blades. So you feel it as though it's coming from the center of your spine out from the shoulder blade, then out to the fingertips. But we're not doing this. So the spiral is really from the ground through the thigh, and then this whole unit rotating and then expressing the spiral out at the fingertips and from the elbow out. This is like the gear shaft. You know, in a car, the gear shaft, and then it connects to the other gears, and the other gears might be smaller, or in a mechanical device, but you got to have that main gear shaft. That's what this is, your spine, your quad, and your trunk. And then that's what rotates out to the fingertips, or out from the feet. So you feel it that way. All right, so we're just going to be released and relaxed, and imagine that model, that tensegrity model. We'll release the tailbone down. It's a release. And with that, there's an upward expression as well, a floating upward expression. And imagine your spine being nice and open. And releasing into the quad, lengthen the spine. Now as you're lifting the pinky, only to the quad, not too high, you start to expand into your back. Use that visual. And then now, as though you're pressing into the front of that mesh, and your back is filling the back of it. It's so much more balanced. As we release, then imagine that tensegrity model and feel each vertebrae creating space and tapping into more of the ligaments and tendons rather than your muscles. So as we do this, the first part of it, we'll use the expanding into the mesh. This all being the first part. So you're pushing, sending energy forward, but opening into the mesh here. The green toy. Then as we release, imagine the tensegrity model, and you're creating more length and more space by releasing the base, lengthening the crown. Okay? So part one, part two. Part one, expanding into your Ming Men. All through this. Then part two, creating the space between the vertebrae. Release your tailbone. Lengthen your spine. Yeah, nice. Now we'll do one more, and now I just want you to put your mind in the space around you. So feel the same sensations. But feel the space that your arms are being floated in. And the space behind your back and between your hands. And imagine this space under your feet and way above your head. Nice. Waving hands in clouds. As you're in this posture, you should have received a bit into your into your low back. So you're not like this. I'm really exaggerating it, and my microphone's back there, so it doesn't look, you can't see it as well. You are a wind sail, or the whole body is the catcher's mitt, but you're not hunched. There's still that element of tensegrity in the spine, but you're just receiving into the low back. Now feel that, and move with that whole frame into your waving hands in clouds. The more you turn here, the more you're absorbing into your back, and then as you switch the hands, that's when you lengthen the spine. Release the tailbone, crown of your head goes up. Now, about past 12 o'clock, start to absorb into your back. And as you switch your hands, I really want you to put your awareness in the spine. Then 12 o'clock, you begin expanding into the back. And as you switch your hands, lengthen the spine. Nice. There's a certain quality to this rhythm of intention that's like breathing. There's an expansion, and then a release and out breath, and lengthening, but you don't coordinate your breath with this. This is just a metaphorical breath. Expanding into your back. Release and lengthen the spine. Yes. Nice. That's beautiful. Now all you have such beautiful chi and intent. Man, that's really nice. One more, expanding. And when you switch the hands, release the tailbone, lengthen the spine. You'll feel it all the way down to the feet. Beautiful. And then when you're ready, just finish out your cycle there and recalibrate. And wherever you have a little bit of tension, tension accumulating, just inflate it and release it. Imagine that tensegrity model. It can be in any part of your body.